Okay, Sonia, congratulations on the book, The Girl Who Dreamed, a Hong Kong memoir of triumph against the odds, which was published last month, March 2024. I enjoyed reading it a lot. I read it and I took lots and lots of notes so I could think of some questions which will be of interest to people who will read the article for the Hong Kong Review of Books. And thanks for coming all this way to City U. I know that you're a City U alumni,
Yes.
an MFA graduate. And thanks for taking the time to talk. I think it was earlier this month, maybe March, early March, we were at the same Hong Kong Writers Circle event.
Yes.
And you read from your book, and there was a discussion that followed. And I remember part of the discussion was about kind of like process.
Yes.
And I'm always interested in the process that writers go through. In fact, I did a whole series for a creative writing course here.
Yes.
About people talking about process. Simon Barry and
Yes.
Michelle and some others were kind enough to go through that. So I'm always interested in process and what writers discover during the writer's process for a particular work, which helps them to carry on and to complete that work.
Yes.
So my question, after that long,
Yeah.
that long context, is: can you talk about that process for
Sure.
your
Yes.
book, The Girl Who
Yes.
Dreamed?
Yes.
And where and when did the idea come? How it went through various stages
Yes.
before you submitted it, the entire finished work, to your publisher.
Yes. First of all, thank you, Paul, for having me. It's good to be back after 8 years when I graduated in July 2016. So yeah, it has been a while and it's good to be back, especially having Paul, you read my book and prepared so well. I'm very, yes, I'm so impressed and I'm very grateful that, yes. And so for me, so as we mentioned, so in 2014, when I learned about from Susie about this MFA program at CTU.
Susie being the professor who started up and was the program leader for the MFA at CityU.
Yes.
And a famous novelist in her own right.
Yes. And so after that, I wrote the first 20 pages of this book, which became my application part of my application package to apply for the CTU MFA program, and I was accepted. And so from there, I learned that 20 pages was more like a summary of my whole book. So because I always been in a business, in a commercial world, so I wrote more effectively. So it's very much like an executive summary, if we can put it that way. And so from there, I gradually learned how to slow down and write scene by scene and word by word, scene by scene. So from the very beginning of my program in 2014, I wrote so I started to develop chapter by chapter. And so after 2 years, I have 80 pages, which I submitted as my creative thesis, the final thesis. And for the 2 years, I worked with like Sophie and other famous writers from the US and the UK. And so I had a really good, I think what the MFA did most for me is to get the feedback and to know that what you write is valuable. And most of my mentors and faculty members, they had the feedback that I got is that you have a powerful story and that you really should get it out and finish it. So I did. So after 2 years, I have 80 pages, and then another 3 years later, so totally 5 years, I complete the first draft of the manuscript. The first manuscript completed. So yes, I reached the about 300 pages, the complete book version. After I edited and also got some feedbacks and revised and then yes, I submitted to Blacksmith Books in August and in 2018. So it was yes, I submitted first complete one, but I didn't hear back from him for 2 years. So then
For 2 years.
For 2 years.
You're
Yes.
very patient.
Yes, so I thought I had no hope already. So, but still I keep. How I survived these 2 years was that I kept polish each scene, and I submit some of the excerpts to U.S. and U.K. literary journals, and I got 6 of them published. So that's why in the book also mentioned the prior publication acknowledgement. So that's how I kept going, and I gained the confidence to keep knocking on my publisher's door and keep telling him that my story has audience and that it's worth publishing. And so that's how the whole then another 3 years later, until only late last year, he finally confirmed yes. And so we quickly do it because we wanted to, and also the Hong Kong International Literary Festival, the team, they loved my book. And so they also pushed him to quickly get it published so that they can launch my book during the festival, and we did. Yes, so we did it on the 9th of March, where it's actually, yeah, the 9th of March would be my official public releasing day. Yeah, and we did a quite a successful event, if I may say so myself. Yes, and quite full house, and it was very well presented and well received, and so far, yes.
That's terrific. It's really a story about several things. The whole process, first of all, perseverance. Not just during the writing process itself, but during the time when it was under consideration by the publisher.
Yes.
And of course, the recognition early on that some well-established authors had seen the value of it, and they gave you feedback, which was very helpful.
Yes.
And then, just the nuts and bolts work of writing.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Getting up and writing for a few hours every day and keeping at it until you're able to produce such a wonderful work.
Thank you.
I want to move on to something else. You've talked about personas in memoirs. I remember when I heard you talk at the Hong Kong Writers' Circle event, that was one of the things that you dipped into a bit.
Yes.
And the persona of the memoir narrator, so to speak. For example, how that persona can be influenced by other memoirs that a writer, especially a memorist,
Yes.
reads. So can you talk about what memoirs you feel might have influenced you and what their influence was, not just in terms of voice, but also in helping you to decide kind of the content that you wanted to select and include in the book?
Right.
Is that too complicated?
No.
That's about a 6-part question. I apologize for that.
Yeah, no problem. When I say voice, because it's during that discussion was very brief, and I couldn't really elaborate. So I wanted to tell you more clearly about what I mean by voice.
Good.
So when I say the young you, the I, there's two I's in the memoir. So the I at that time when you were young, maybe 13, then the I of you, the writer now, maybe 30. So there's this gap in your point of view. So the voice is not just a voice of writing, but it's more of point of view. Whether it's also the persona. So you in the book, you need to have two voices where the young one tells what happened, and the older one reflect on why this incident means something to you. Why this incident worth writing. So for example, I wrote about when I was 5 or 6 years old, and we having this moon, I prefer to call it moon festival, right? And so underneath the moon, and our family, and together with all the other teachers and the principal together, we had this gathering under the moon. And so, but for the 5 or 6 years old me, didn't know what it meant to be there. So, but the thing that you read in the book, you read in the book now, is from the reflection of the writer self. So it's two together. So the younger one telling you where I was, but the older one telling you what it meant. And what it meant was, oh, my family seems to be in a perfect harmony, and that was my dream, to be seen and to be so pure and right and harmonious with my family and environment, and knowing where I belong. So that sense, I couldn't have understood that when I was 5, 6, but I wrote about it, and as a writer self, the voice from the writer telling the happy. So that's what my dream was. That's what the girl was, and how she gradually developed and to make her dream come true. So that's how the two personas and the two voices work together.
I see. It reminds me of, because in education we talk about cognition and
Yes.
metacognition.
Yes.
And as a 5-year-old who's looking at the moon and sees her family, you're cognizant of this like ideal,
Yes.
of this ideal.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
looking back later, you're being metacognitive about it. And,
Exactly.
you know, being aware
Yeah.
of your own cognition and what does that all mean.
Yes. And so the if I may, I need to refer back to a bit my notes. So about the books, I don't mean that they shape me, or the memoirist. I don't mean that they shape me as, to the content that I select, or even so more in the ideology level, where, for example, Wild Swan by Yong Chang, Wild Swans, Yong Chang, she told me that after reading her book, I got the idea that Chinese women's lives matter, that it worth writing. So because before her book, there's no really much books about from Chinese women writing about women's lives. So her book really showed me in the world that it matters. We matter. So that's what I got the idea that, okay, maybe my story has an audience from the very beginning, that before I actually start writing. And so it was because of her book, she gave me this idea. Yes, because when you don't see yourself in the books, you don't think that you're worth writing. So her book was the first one to tell me that, yes, we should tell our story too. Our stories have value. And so from there, then later during my program, then I read Because I Remember Tara, Father, I Remember You, by Sue William Silverman. And she told me that writing really traumatic events. So she had incest. Her father raped her for over 10 years. So, and the mother pretended she didn't know anything. So, like me, she was totally alone, and how we survive. So, I think from her end, but her memoir, as much horror as it is very beautifully written, very poetic. And so from there, I got the idea, okay, I don't need to write horrible stuff horribly. I can render it artistically. And so to make it become an art so that many people can endure and to be able to read it and understand what it was like to be like us broken people trying to put pieces together. So that I got from that from the book. And then the other one, of course, very famous, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And then I think, again, it is very poetically written and very, very well received. Therefore, I feel that I can also do that. I want to write a literary memoir because Wild Swans, as much as it's from by Young Zhang, as much as it's well received, but I feel it's more like a horizontal, only one level kind of speaking, this happened to me, da da da. And so, yes, the story itself is very heart-wrenching, but I don't feel that I can get into her mind, her thinking so much. And so I wanted to, from there, I want to develop further and to really dig into my psyche and reveal to the world that what was like, how I was feeling at that time, rather than just telling the story as it is. Yeah, so this, I think, so the memoir that I read, yeah, of course, throughout the 2 years, I studied so many memoirs, but I think these three sort of, summarize how I feel, what I can get from other memoirists.
I see what you mean. And I think one of the things that you're describing is kind of the difference between a memoir and an autobiography.
Exactly, yes.
I remember a long time ago starting to read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, the famous American revolutionary and diplomat. And I still remember the first sentence is, "I was born," right? And the whole autobiography is like that, just very factual accounting of the events in his life. Whereas the way that you're differentiating with the memoir is it involves a lot of introspection, metacognition, and it's constructing meaning out of that sequential account, historical account of things.
Yeah. Because many people say, like, who are you? Why are you writing memoir? Like, they usually think as like autobiography, but so it's unless you were famous like Benjamin Franklin. But for memoir, I think it's more delve into the psyche to review to go to the dark places, and help people to go there and see what it's like, and then come out, hopefully a bit wiser and a bit. So it's it's more the so that I hope that not sympathy but empathy will come out from the reading. Yes.
Well, I think probably both will come out. I think it's probably unavoidable. Empathy for your empathy and sympathy both regarding your struggles, because throughout your memoir these struggles are so poignant. Some are violent and traumatic, and sometimes they lead to flight or retreat or decay, and other times they lead to rebirth and flowering. So can you talk about some of those struggles and how you hope to articulate them in your book as you thought back about them as the writer years later? How did you hope to articulate them?
Yes. So I think the big question is, how I become me, and I think for a memoir to work. And so I think I did it for we construct scenes. So for example, let's tackle the big elephant in the room. So the sexual assault scene is very violent and very and also detailedly with you. It is a difficult read, but I really wanted to bring the readers there and understand what it was like to be dehumanized. Because we usually, this word about rape, it just appears so often everywhere. And in Hong Kong, ridiculously, there's a movie called Rape 1, 2. I felt that this is just so that really shouldn't be the way, and that people should understand more from the girl's voice, really, to tell you the truth and how she felt becoming an object. And also I have another friend who is also a writer. She didn't mind that I mentioned Jane Hong. She wrote about her daughter being raped and murdered. And so, but when she told her husband, which is the stepfather of the daughter, he didn't feel much of it. He just felt, okay, rape mother, like it happened. Well, it's terrible, but he cannot sympathize or empathize. So I wanted to tell people like that, like to have people understand what it was like when through the like being there, and to let them visualize it, because when you can see it, then it probably matters a bit more to you rather than just the words itself. So that's why I wrote it, I articulated it so in detail, and wrote it so that the victim has a voice. And also by voicing it, by putting it out, I take the narrative back, so that yes, I feel empowered by writing it. I feel not as powerless as I was then, and so I hope other victims, they can, after they read it, they know that they can also voice their because. As Maya Angelou also said, that the biggest tragedy is that if you cannot say what you cannot do, justify for yourself. You cannot tell others what you suffered, and it's like when you have a cancer, you need to go and see doctor. It cannot heal itself. But a lot of people thought that, oh, the depression, the post-traumatic trauma, that's oh, that happens so often, just live it with it, just live with it. But no, you shouldn't be blamed, and you shouldn't have all the guilt and doubt and all the anxiety all alone. You should seek help, and I think the first step is to know that you are not alone. And when you know that you are not alone, you gradually will gain power. And just like me, I'm writing it and you reading it, and I think we are there together.
I see. Oh, thank you so much for explaining about that.
And I also write about the difficult family scene, because as improvised immigrant family, because I think also, and you also haven't seen very much in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong stories never really include girls like us from mainland China and struggle through improvised, and our parents, they lost their privileged jobs, and in order for us to have more opportunities. So yes, we are economic immigrants, but still, it doesn't mean that we need to be suffered alone and quietly. And I think that again, it's back to that voice. Yeah, our voices matter, and I think that this story also need to be told, and it's an untold story, and so that's why I also work so hard to give all the details and to the scenes and everything, including the conversations. So one of my the professional writer feedback is that my conversations they are quite vivid also. So yeah, I think I really wanted to bring you there and to tell you what was like to be us, and because we like me, I also go out reading a lot of these great books, and but we never see ourselves in there. So I think that I wanted to do this untold. Yeah, I want to tell the untold story. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, let me pick up on one of those last things that you just mentioned about the great books, because as I read your book, I began to see how classical
Yes.
classical Chinese literature and pop literature and pop
Indeed.
music
Yes.
and kind of like romance
Yeah.
novels
Indeed.
had a formative effect
Yes.
on you, not just as a writer, but
Yes.
as a person as well.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of that book by Annie Dillard, Living by Fiction. Not so much like the content of the book is by the title, you know, Living by
Yeah.
Fiction.
Yes.
I mean that readers who regularly read fiction, speaking from my own experience,
Yes,
but I
yes,
think
yeah.
it's true of other people as well,
Yes.
they kind of like begin to see life through the eyes of characters in novels
Yes.
or the struggles that they go
Yes.
through, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a bit
Yes.
about this theme of
Yeah.
living through fiction, which seems
Indeed.
so prevalent in your work.
Yes. So in fact, the title of the book, "The Girl Who Dreamed," the dream is coming from the book, "The Dreams of the Red Chamber," right? So I wrote so much in it connects the whole book. So yes, and characters, I think I can identify with the three main protagonists, and over time, when you reread this and you identify with different characters afterwards, but so. And also the popular or romantic books like Outside the Window or the song The Olive Tree. I think everything this it helps you it gives you it tells you that there's different opportunities. There's a world much bigger than yours, so that you can step in, and it opens up to you. So it's much. So instead of being in your narrowed, sorrowful world, but you can the fictions, these novels or songs, they invite you to a different place where opportunities are available for you, also for me, even also that. So my little self become much bigger, not in terms of ego, but in terms of knowing that there's so much more I can do. I think that so that gives you great hope, and so that it helps you to keep going and knowing. So I don't like to, it's not just motivation, but it's all, wow, there's this dream, there's this world out there where you can pursue. And so and there are so many opportunities, and so yes, I think it just opens the whole new world to me. And also that once you read a book, it becomes part of you, and so your inner world. So it's not just your outer world. You go out there, explore and succeed or what, but also internally your heart become bigger and bigger, and your mind also, that you can accept all the diversities and opportunities. And so like is it war women who say we contain multiplicity, so it's so many, it just expand your horizon, and you feel that yes, I'm a citizen of the world, you know. All these people, you know, I'm connecting with them, even just mentally, but mentally is so important that you know that you are part of something bigger than your current world that try to your life, or you know, try to suppress you or what. But there's always the other side, and that you can go and get it. Yeah. So I think without fictions, without book, yeah. So books saved me. Without
Books saved you.
yes. Yes.
So this idea of like you know mentally that
Yes.
there's this world,
Yeah.
and you talked about empathy
Yes.
towards your work before,
Yes.
but there's and so when people come to your work, they see this other world.
Yeah.
So not just mentally, but emotionally as well. Isn't
Yes,
that a part of it?
indeed. Oh, definitely. I mean, emotionally, mentally, you expand and you become more aware that there's different people survive. You know, yeah, and their struggles and and how they went through, and I think what they went through and how they survive. So I think yeah, I think survival and knowing that. It's all about humanity. I think whether you are Chinese or American or what, but I think that there's this humanity among all of us, and so I just want you to know that. So this life, even as a Chinese, but you know her struggles and her process, maybe I can also get something out of it. So I think it's not. So I really want interestingly, back to like the publication that we talked earlier, I approached a literary agent, and the reason she rejected me was that, oh, your book is too Hong Kong. So yeah, so I think it then after I got it published in U.S. in the piece, the excerpts and in the U.S. and U.K. I know it's not just it's a human story, and it's a story that the world needs to know. Yeah, it's worth reading. So yeah, I think now yeah, I think it proves that it's not just even if it's a Hong Kong story, but it's also resonate. I mean, all these these issues about immigration and about so sexual assault, and this is a universal issue, right? And the survival and and how we move on, and how persevere, all this. I think these are universal issues and themes.
So in order to see your work published, a part of it was being able to persuade a publisher that in the particular readers could see the universal, the idea of like heaven in a wildflower, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And I see again throughout the book. I know there's a special not to overgeneralize, but there's a certain approach towards nature, which is obvious in Chinese literature, and
Yes.
and Heaven and a Wildflower, Wordsworth or whoever. There's also this reverence towards nature and what it tells us about the human condition as
Yes,
well.
yes, yes.
And I see all of these natural references in your work.
Because Paul, it's about show, don't tell. So when you your emotional world, what status of emotion you are, you are in, then it reflects on what you see. So the same blue sky, what you see and what I see in different, when I feel happy or sad, and then we see it differently. Also, then when you write about that, then it also reflects your internal world. So it's
Yes.
yes. So it's showing rather than telling, and also because when you were in your younger self, for example, when I was 15, I cannot tell anyone about what happened, and so I felt so much guilt, and I felt it was my fault, and so that's why. So that's why there's this scene where I was in the construction site and under the moon, and the moon in the dog's eye in that chapter. So it's the writer me trying to show the world that what was a broken 15-year-old girl, how she felt and she couldn't tell. And so the writer me show people what was in the construction site, what she saw, the cigarette butts, and so all the broken things in there, the uh, the very well, what construction is like. So I think that's particular, that scene is to show you through these objects of external world, to show you the internal world of
Yes.
the girl's feeling.
Yes, you do that very well throughout the book, if I can say so.
Thank you.
Also throughout your book, there's all these kinds of dualisms as well. We have insider, outsider,
Yes.
loved and unloved,
Yes.
flight and return,
Yes.
elite and then
Yes.
outcast,
Yeah.
abandoned and redeemed,
Yeah.
rabbit and tiger, Bao Chai looking up, Dayu looking down, and private sphere and public sphere.
Yes.
So my question is, can
Yeah.
you kind of
Yeah.
elaborate on some of those
Yeah.
dualisms,
Yes.
and how do they propel the narrative?
So it's like life and death. Because there's death, then it makes life more meaningful, or you need to more precious. So for me, then maybe because I'm a Libra, I always consider this issue of equilibrium, and so the equilibrium. So for the two things, when equilibrium was violated, then what happened? Then conflict happened. So conflict propels narrative.
Yes.
Right. So there's this, and so when in a memoir, there's no such thing as plot where you can like a fiction where you can plot things. So in the memoir, it's all this conflict that help propel the so-called plot. So it is the emotional part that you were seeing in the memoir. So hence all this, the conflicts existing, the struggles, how to get from one end to another, and how to reach the equilibrium point. And I think that's the thing that always that's all. I think a lot about that, and so that's how I also reflect on the book, and how to seek, as I mentioned earlier, the harmonized world, like back to my 5-6-year-old me, pure and nice and whole and feeling. So, but it's full of this struggle of the two sides of the issues that I try to find my balance and find myself back, whole.
I see. Okay, let me move on to something else, and that's when you first came to Hong Kong and you reunited with your parents because they had left you and your sister back in Fujian province
Yes.
while they left their job as doctor and teacher
Yes.
to seek. They were thinking better
Yes.
economic
Yes.
circumstances.
And more education opportunity, more developments for more opportunities for us, the four children, because
Yeah.
otherwise we'll be stuck. Our hukou will be stuck in Datian, where we cannot apply. It's very hard for us even to apply for another university away from our from our prefecture. You know, going to study in Beijing would be, you know, quite really like reaching the sky kind of difficulty.
Yeah.
So coming to Hong Kong is also open up for us more. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember many years ago when I was visiting a university in Beijing. One of the graduate assistants who they kind of assigned to me to
Yes.
help me with things, she said she was the first person from her village
Yes.
to go to university.
Yes.
It was such a big deal. So this
Yes.
idea of Beijing was really, it was far away.
Yes.
It was far away.
Yes. Yeah.
And so your parents came to Hong Kong because they saw this as more opportunity. And I was thinking about, you know, because Hong Kong's history and its relationship with the rest of China is so different than so many other places where the British imperial project
Yes.
took place. I mean, at one
Yes.
time, much of Africa was also divided into British colonies, and there's memories of colonists who returned to Britain and wrote about it and talked about their own circle. I've been reading some travel writing lately from the late 19th century of people from Britain who came to Hong Kong and southern China in particular, and you know, kind of how they constructed their narrator and through their observations of what was going on and who was doing what. You know, with the so-called, like, you know, local people.
Yes. Yes.
And it didn't seem to change their perspective a lot. You know, they still seem to be kind of living in a bubble.
Yes.
Perhaps you've kind of seen this in Hong Kong. But your experience as a migrant to Hong Kong kind of stands this whole thing on its head. And I was wondering, can you talk about some of those unique aspects, you know, as an immigrant from essentially one part of China to another part of China, and how that's contributing something new to the memoir genre?
Yes. So back in the 80s, we are still as a British colony, right? Hong Kong was, and and I mentioned in my book that there's this hierarchy in Hong Kong where the white Westerners, so the British and so they're on the top. They were, and then there's the Eurasia, and then maybe Cantonese immigrants, and then the rest of the mainland Chinese immigrant, and the Filipinos and yeah, so the poor, more sort of South Asian countries. So with this hierarchical society structure, when I first arrived, I think I more experienced the discrimination from the locals, so from the Cantonese people, because we don't speak Cantonese, we speak Hokkien. So once you can tell, even these days, the Cantonese people will still ask me, you're not a local, right? Aren't you? So that obvious. So I think language discriminates. So that was my first-hand difficulty was with the local rather than colonial as such. But it was until I think I mentioned in the chapter called Home of Lost Souls, where I lived in Chongqing Mansions. So I have lived there for a year, and it was at that time, especially with the receptionist that I mentioned in the book, Marianne, or the helper. She that's not her real name. So she whenever a white person talked to her, she immediately put up and so I always need to have someone like yourself stand next to me, then she could hear me. Yeah. So that was the first I experienced the or yeah. And later at the jobs that I do, that I also mentioned in the book, that because I'm a woman and I'm not Westerner or foreigner, so I didn't get to have the private office space. Yeah, I need to sit outside, even though I was in a managerial position like the man before me, but I couldn't get his office. But I had to sit with the assistant, the secretaries and other clerical workers. So in that sense, I experienced all the unfairness and unjust society from there. But I think it's so it what was your second part of the question? I don't really.
My question is, how is your book contributing to something unique to the memoir genre? And you, as I was saying, it kind of it inverts it in a way, or stands it on its head a bit. Do you see other contributions that this particular memoir makes? You've talked about telling women's stories, which is very important. You've talked about being an immigrant and encountering discrimination from, I think, unexpected places. Can you think of other ways?
Yes. Many critics, they frequently belittle the entire genre of memoir, especially books by women, by labeling memoirs confessional. So I wanted to redeem the notion of confession for everyone who went through hard times and wishes to write about them candidly. Many critics or general publics, they don't really understand that when we confess, we seek the commonality of our experiences, thus adding to the full range of what it means to be human, and profoundly human. And so through courageous writing memoirs, we understand our own life narratives and learn from those of others. And so the more artfully we write, the more that the book or that it will resonate with the readers and the world. So yes, I want to speak to the fact that confessional, it's courageous. Yeah, it's not what you think being just layering out there and seek sympathy. I think it's more that you put it, you confess, you go to the depth of your pain, and it's and also a lot of people will call it like a mystery memoir. Why someone in a middle age people talking about how emptiness their life is, why that can be in a literary world as a literature, but why someone from a lower class and talk about them the difficulties they went through, then it became mystery memoir. It's just so unfair, the whole thing. And so I want to I want to say that, okay, yes, I went through this sexual assault brutally, but it didn't stop me. I didn't let it stop me. So, and the crime didn't stop me. And so for me, I have no help, no resources, and everything against me. But I still need to heal myself. And one way is through the books that we talk about. And so, in fact, nearly everything worked against someone I met before. So I wanted the world also to know that people like me, that we our story matters. This is worth telling, and that it's not, we don't want to see your tears, but it's just that you also need to understand that there's different people in this world. And so I think how I persevered and that I can launch this book today through courageous confessions. And so I encourage more people to do so, that it is, yes, it is okay. It is okay for you to voice your hardship and to put it, to render it articulately, to make it into an art, and then the world can appreciate you through your life. They may also get something out of. So, if I may, I think I just wanted to, because I had this really. I put down in the proper words about my memoir and what it means, and so I really wanted to share with you and everyone else. So writing a memoir involves sweat, tears, fear, anxiety, doubt, and exasperation, and yet something else emerges, something stronger than all the aforementioned: love. It was profoundly energizing, electrifying, and uplifting to write this memoir. So The Girl Who Dreamed is a love letter sent from my heart. It is my love song to the marginalized people, the wounded souls, and everyone who cares.
Oh, that's beautiful. A love letter to the wounded, the marginalized, and those who care. So I think that's a very good conclusion for our interview. Unless you have anything else that you want to say, then I will say thank you very much, Sonia, for spending time today and talking so candidly and openly about your beautiful book.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.